Mike, congratulations on this film. I'll be around.
Thanks.
So, how does it feel being virtually shown at the Egyptian theater?
Oh, it's awesome because well, it's the closest thing to actually physically being there, right? But that's one of my favorite movie theaters in all of LA. So yeah, it's quite an honor.
It's quite a different experience having your movie shown virtually, but your film's been showing at festivals for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's screened up in San Francisco and it's screened here in LA at the Hollywood Real Independent Festival. And yeah, because of COVID, our run got canceled prematurely.
Yeah. So, where did the original idea came from for something like this?
Well, the whole idea stemmed from, just being because I'm primarily a filmmaker, but, I've been in bands since I was a teenager. And I feel like a lot of movies that come out about musicians or bands in general don't really cover the grind, and, how you pretty much have to do all your promoting, how you have to book your own shows, even if there is a booker, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
then once you have that bill set for the promoters, no band wants to be the opener, and we wanted to show every single aspect of that. So even within our running time, we didn't actually make a huge dent trying to do what we were trying to set out to do. But that was our primary intention.
How long was your career in the band life lasted for yourself before you got into filming?
Well, I think I stopped. I think I'm officially done playing in bands. But the last time I played live was maybe November of 2018, I want to say.
Oh, okay. Was the music in this film very similar to what you actually played?
Well, I scored most of the music in the film, and then I wrote a lot of the songs for the fictional bands. So I was working outside of my genre, you know what I mean? But I mainly do a lot of post punk melodic type of stuff. I was in a pseudo Western Gothic folk band for a bit, so it's just all the different genres that I enjoy. So
Pseudo Western Gothic. Wow, that's that's quite a combination.
yeah, I did that for a minute. Like I'd say that band was around 2010 till 2012, something like that.
Hmm.
You know.
So, who did most of the performance of the music for your film?
So I recorded pretty much like 90% of it, and then I had some of the actors come in and do their vocal parts. So I wrote the vocal melodies and all that, and they would record over my stuff. And Dan Roche, the co-writer, he's also a singer-songwriter. So I think we have two or three of his originals in there. And then 90% of the cast is already made up of musicians. So then I had them write their own stuff as well. So it was a nice mixture.
So, so when did Dan actually came on board, and how he actually helped you fine tune the script?
So Dan has actually been in my last two features, and then he was in my last two features, and then we wrote a detective noir story, a script that we really wanted to make, but I don't want to make it the way I make my films, which is without a budget whatsoever. So we're like, let's wait on that, and let's do this project about musicians. It'll be easy to do. We can cast all our friends, yada yada, and it turned out to be a worse idea than it wasn't easy breezy. Let's just say that, because we got a cast of 100 characters. You know what I mean? So it turned into this crazy epic project that I was incredibly overwhelmed by, and pretty much went, this is why did this is like total opposite of what we were gonna do. This is worse than that. So from the start, Dan had like a couple ideas. He's a huge Richard Linklater fan, like I am. We both have pretty similar tastes in films. We meet up once a week and we have a weekly movie marathon. We'll watch like 2 to 3, 4 movies back to back, and we'll talk about them extensively. What we loved about them, what we didn't, yada yada. And we're like, let's collaborate on this other project. And within 1 week, I rewatched Slacker in Nashville, and I was like, Nashville, the Robert Altman movie from the early '70s, focuses on a country music scene, right? And in that movie, Altman had these actors who weren't musicians actually sing their own songs and so on and so forth. And I'm like, we can totally do that, and really show behind the scenes of being a band at a music festival, for example, at like a local sort of DIY music festival. So it's a really small, intimate setting. And that's how the story started coming about. And we didn't really have a plan as to what we were going to do with it. And we just started writing. And the very first scene that we wrote were the two burglars that are musicians that steal from Airbnbs that other musicians stay at. And it sort of grew out of that. And we're like, okay, how's this going to segue to the next thing? How's this, so on and so forth. But like Slacker, we weren't going to come back to the characters. We were just going to show different people throughout a day in a music scene, at a music festival, the fans, the promoters, all that sort of stuff. And then we started falling in love with the characters. And we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we brought back that character we did in the opening scene? And let's show more of the burglars and so on and so forth. So Dan helped fine tune that. And we sort of did like, I feel like the movie is done in two parts. We have the night and the day. There's also like a mini intermission. And the first part is very segue domino effect like. And then the second half, now that you semi know the characters, you know who they are in relation to each other, we're going to see how every action from the first half affects their night. So that's all. That was also a lot of Dan's ideas.
It seems like this project was fairly ambitious, to come up with dozens and dozens of characters for your film, and like you said before, it was a crazy idea. But how did you manage to come up with so many characters?
Like I said, that was the initial plan where we weren't going to come back to anybody. You know what I mean? And then we're like, oh, but we need to have the rocker that gets, the kind of male chauvinist rocker type. We need the successful band that's really cocky. We need the person that, the aspiring musician. We need the young blood too. People that are just getting really excited about music for the first time. We need the jaded rocker that doesn't really want to do it, that didn't really want the fame, and then ended up getting it, and they're just miserable. And then you have the person that's been striving so hard to get out of their rut for years and to get some attention, on their music. And it just kind of it sprouted from that. And then we felt like, those characters needed their own mini supporting cast as well, So that's how I grew. And also I think like films like Days of Confused, I think you have like a 30 to 40 plus cast.
Yeah.
Everyone pretty much plays their part. And that's a hint too, with the movie, falling back to the fatalist theme of the movie. And if things do happen for a reason, are we all connected? We use musicians sort of as a metaphor towards real life experiences, how even one person that you met for one day has affected your entire life without you truly being aware of that. So we have the quote at the very beginning, Eve Valentine's quote, and she says, we all play our parts. And you're supposed to be thinking about a musician in a band, everyone plays their parts, like the keyboardist comes in, the saxophonist comes in when they're supposed to come in, but it's also about how we each interweave through one another's lives.
Yeah, that's very philosophical that you presented. Well, you present a lot of philosophies throughout the entire film. But how did you with so many characters? How did you come up with so many stories?
It's like I said, it's a natural progression where I feel like the characters just end up writing the story themselves. So you start putting a character in situation B and C. We didn't really have a plan for any of that. And it just kind of, like I said, just like the story itself, it had a life of its own and a domino effect. And we're like, we were inspired by a lot of incidents that have happened to us, that have happened to friends in other bands. The whole, I've had a series of crazy bad experiences with edibles. So we're like, oh, we got to have something to do with that. And then we have a close friend who actually inspired the movie's title. And she had an incident where she had just moved to LA. She had met this band while they were on tour, and one of the guys gave her these crazy edibles. And she thought that this band totally conspired to bring her to LA to murder her. And so she was losing it. So we put that into the story, and we're like, how is this going to affect everything? We're like, wait a second. If we have a bunch of people at the festival eating all these edibles by this prankster character, then some of the bands that are supposed to play never get to play because they're so messed up. So, and I thought that was actually kind of funny that we never really see any of these bands play. You never actually hear their music because something happens throughout the day where they're totally because it sidetracks,
Mm-hmm. Well, just like real life, right?
It's like real life.
With such a complex script, did you leave room for improv?
The original cut of the movie was 3 hours long, and we had a really tight script because I love when actors, and I don't really fully rehearse them. We'll run through lines maybe like a couple of times before we roll. We just don't have the time for that. But I love when they embody the characters and they just run for it. And my second feature that By the Wayside, which was done I think about 8 years ago, that entire movie was fully improvised. We didn't even have a real outline. I had a beginning and that was it. Like, these are the two characters, this is what's going on, and just run with it. And that movie, the original cut of that movie, not original cut, but the assembly of that was about 18 hours. And now it's like about a 70-minute long movie. So it's really compact. So I do love improvisation. So I think every single scene that we shot, I let the characters just run with it. But at the end of the day, we got to stay on board and not stray too far off. But then, yeah, I think I'm going to collect all the individual scenes that weren't released and put them online, probably through my Patreon or something like that, just so people can check them out.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a lot more footage. But were there characters that had to be cut out, or did you manage to include everybody?
We pretty much included everybody. Some of them had a lot bigger parts. We just we had to streamline it, and then we still were criticized that you can totally pull out X and X character, you can pull out these people, and I'm like, we can't. We take that out, then this stuff at the end makes no sense. It doesn't happen. So everything that's in there is in there for a reason. It's really well thought out. But yeah, there was more stuff with the what's his name, Simon, the character that has the imaginary friend. So you get to see his whole backstory, and his friend Alistair, who they go on a double date. You get to see more of Alistair's issues, generational issues, which is with his much younger girlfriend. So we went into all that sort of stuff. We had more scenes, generational, I guess, wars between Eve Valentine and the kids that she hangs out with, because she's like, she's a Xennial, cusp of Gen X, and then these kids are like 16, 17 years old. And we see the back and forth rivalry between them. And it was a lot of fun, but we had to drop all that. So some of the characters had way more story on screen.
I feel like you're trying to create, a dozen movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was the idea. We're like, this would work well as a TV series, So, but yeah, it was pretty much the idea was just a glimpse into everybody's life without overstaying our welcome, But just it's just kind of like, imagine coming to a new town, and someone hands you a joint and goes, "Hey, go wander at this music scene, see if you can find out how everybody's related." And so it's your first day and you kind of don't really know what world you're entering into, you know what I mean? But you and the movie also crosses a lot of different genres. So
For yourself, doesn't all of this make editing fairly difficult, trying to keep it all together?
I mean, I love editing. That's my favorite process of the filmmaking experience. But no, because we had a tight script, so I knew tonally where each scene was headed. But when it comes, you have to kill your darlings. You're like, oh man, those improvisations are really great, and there's probably like 5% of them made it into the movie. It's still pretty attached to what the script originally was, but it's just like you have to constantly review those scenes and go, oh man, that's so good, but what is this adding right now aside from like a really cool character trait? So it's just a part of the decision making process.
Well, let me take a turn towards your casting process, because you mentioned earlier that you brought in a lot of friends into your film. Could you talk about that? How you managed to convince them?
Well, I have the first stuff that I started working on was Oblivion, which was this 22-minute long web series, and we made about a dozen episodes, probably more than that. This is like we started doing that maybe 12 years ago, and I cast, since it's very, I want to say it fits in the same realm as I'll Be Around. I guess I'll Be Around is a more mature version of that show. But, I cast, since it was an alt-rock show, I did cast a lot of local personalities, people that I was friendly with, and I basically had them play themselves. They weren't actors. And then I mixed them with, people that auditioned. And so starting from that, I made a lot of close relationships. I made a lot of really, great friendships. And I tend to use those actors in all of my stuff. pretty much I think almost all the main players of my first movie, Jerry, are in I'll Be Around, and they're in my second flick, By the Wayside. They're in some of my music videos. I love working for them and or with them, and I'll write for them. And I also like to challenge them and have them play characters that they don't normally get cast as, or I want them to play an entirely different character than something they've done for me before. So that's really fun. And it's actually all part of a shared universe, you know. All the movies are slightly connected. And so the casting process for this flick, it wasn't intentional, but I have a lot of friends, or I know a lot of people in LA just from playing in bands that are actors that are also musicians. And, you know, they either were in a band at one point, or they're still in a band, or they're going to be in a band, whatever. So I started casting according to that, because that'd be really cool. I'm like, wait, my buddy so-and-so plays drums. Why don't we just cast him as the drummer of that band? You know, because that'll be really easy to do, instead of having someone imitating, you know, to be imitating a drummer. And then casting process, just, you know, for everybody else, it was just putting notices out and seeing if anyone wanted to be a part of this project. And we're like, it's a total love letter. We're not going to make any money off of this thing. It's probably going to be a miserable experience. You're not going to get catering. You're going to get red vines to eat, you know, whatever's around. And it's going to be pretty much, we're not going to have a lot of rehearsals. It's going to be a lot of adrenaline. We're going to be running around a lot. But we're going to work according to your schedule. So it wasn't like we were, you know, forcing people to take time off work. It was just like, it makes it really difficult for whoever's my assistant AD, or for me to even schedule, because we're like, oh my God, this person has a 12-hour shift this day, and this person's only available that day for like the next 3 weeks, or this person's going out of town, you know? So it was just like, and you can imagine what a cast that big. It was like, this is like, you know, this is like, we're climbing Mount Everest right now. This is insane. So it's like, I don't want to equate it to Apocalypse Now, but I can just imagine what Coppola went through, you know? So it's a lot of personalities. And then you do have your fair share of egos, and you have your fair share of people that this might be their first feature project, you know, or they're used to theater, and they're used to like having a much controlled environment, and they had to adapt to this kind of, you know, running around and shooting sort of thing. So yeah, the casting process was a lot of fun, and then, you know, bringing forward all those different personalities.
Well, you surely have a eclectic group of friends. That's for sure. What were the looks of all the characters were the looks of your friends? They basically brought in their own, you know, costumes and such.
My good friend Leslie Django, she did all the styling for the flick, and she's really, I mean, she's a designer anyway, but she's really into like old school 78, 79 punk and new wave, and she's into Bowie and all that. And I initially, since initially the scene was supposed to be more goth oriented, dark wave, a lot. I wanted all the characters to wear pretty much all black, because that's not really represented in unstereotypical ways. But then I'm like, but they're so eccentric, and I'm going to completely contradict that. And I want them to all have a really individual look, and have, you know, we have the girl with you know, she has the purple cape.
Yeah.
She wears the blue wig. And then the burglars, I thought it would really be funny if they actually wore black and white stripes, you know, and look like burglars. That might be their whole shtick as a band, you know? So yeah, I wanted everybody to have a distinct personality. And then we have the drummer that's wearing like this pink raincoat, and he has a cowboy hat on. And the guitarist of the band is pissed off all the time because this guy is completely destroying their uniform look. They don't look as cool because this guy looks like an idiot, you know? Yeah. So we're like, that would be a lot more fun to have everyone have this, you know, very eccentric, unique look and flavor to them. And also because there's a big cast, you kind of want them to stand out a little bit or be more memorable.
I do want to basically point out the cinematography throughout the entire film is very unique. I want to say it's almost like sort of like a documentary style. Can you talk about your filming style?
So for this flick, and I've worked with Jessica, was a cinematographer on Oblivion, and she also shot By the Wayside. And since I told you that By the Wayside it was really improvisational, we had to shoot it in that cinema great style. We had to do the handheld camera work because there weren't any rehearsals. We didn't have any dialogue written out. We just ran with it. So for this, there's scenes where the scenes that I'm in, my character's in, it has more of a documentary feel. So those scenes with that character and Joni's a character that has to go to work and she has to pay her bills. She's struggling to pay her bills. It has more of a handheld look and the camera whip pans a lot. And then for the other stuff is, you know, lockdown shots and so forth. And one of the main inspirations for this stuff is actually a short that Linklater did before he did Slacker, before he did Days, and it's called Woodstock. And it's just him wandering around with a camera and filming all these people hanging out at this, you know, mini concert. And I think it was done in 85. I think that's the name, Woodstock 85. And the look, it just looks so cool. And when I saw that, I looked at Dan, I'm like, that's what the movie should look like. We should have that documentary feel, give it that rawness, that like late 80s, early 90s independent look, that, you know, independent film look that we love so much, a 16 millimeter look. So, and I guess it gives it, you know, it makes it a little bit more relatable and not so polished and glamorous, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a definite conscious decision to go in that route.
It sounds like you are a Richard Linklater influenced you quite a bit. In fact, I read on your biography on IMDb that you're a self-taught director. Could you talk about that and what are you striving to be?
I mean, I would love to get all my dream projects financed, you know, but I would never dare touch those the way that we do, you know, the way that we've done the other 3 flicks, because I don't want to ruin them, you know, like I need the full support, you know what I mean? So, you know, for DIY projects, I tended to write stuff that I know I can pull off. You know, like I said, I know a bunch of musicians. I have access to all these venues. Let's shoot a movie with 3,000 characters. That's going to be easy. Bad idea, right? But yeah, it was just like, it just came from, I guess, you know, like I wanted to sing for a band, and I was like, I don't know, 14, 15. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play bass and try to come up with some songs that I can sing to and try to get a band together. I want to make films. So I took a film history class and a couple of film courses, and I was like, I don't have the patience for this thing. I don't have the patience to wait it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and start shooting my own stuff, or I'm going to go ahead and try to make a first feature film and just learn along the way instead of going to film school. And I think, at least in my case, I prefer to just jump in and do something opposed to taking this long course and being taught how to do something, because you learn your own way. You know, you become, you elevate your skills that way. And also on the first feature that I did, which was an aborted feature, I don't really count it as a first feature. Again, that was my film school. I learned a lot through Jessica just alone. And that was done in like 2008. So when we did that movie, so, you know, even with Oblivion, I was able to fine tune skills and figure out what I like on camera, how I like the camera to be placed, how I like the characters to talk, you know, and in a weird way, just, you know, you have an intent as well. I'm probably sidetracking a little here, but you have an intent to make a movie a certain way. And if you look at those 3 movies that I've done, they feel like they were done by the same person, but that wasn't intentional. I wasn't trying to make it as campy as some stuff comes out. It's just like this. It's just like all the elements working in place kind of deal, you know? So that has to do a lot with the DIY factor too, because like I said, we don't have a lot of time to rehearse. We don't have a lot of time, you know, we don't have a controlled location setting. You know what I mean? It's not like we rented out a park and we have like 12 hours to figure out how we're going to do everything. We have about 30 to 40 minutes to get a scene done. So I think that's all part of the DIY factor. And again, punk rock, like I said, you know, you don't know how to play, get some instruments, form a band, and, you know, figure it out. So I guess it's just like being fed to the lions, you know, just jumping off the cliff and going for it.
Well, you know, experience in the trenches sometimes are more, it's much better than paying tens of thousands of dollars in schooling education, right?
And then you have like a project that you might not like, but, you know, you had that experience, you know, you went through some stuff and you met people and so on and so forth. And, you know, everything I've done is a learning experience. And you're like, okay, I won't do that next time. But, you know, I don't think that anyone can really, truly teach you how to avoid those mistakes. You have to make them yourself and figure it out.
That's true. Now the film itself takes place over one day. Obviously, your production is not one day. How long did it actually took?
Geez, we did you want from like the very beginning? We did a crowdfunding campaign that I think lasted about a month, and then we didn't actually start shooting for almost a year after that. And then we started in I want to say late August, and it was sporadic because again we can't shoot continuously because we don't have all the actors at the same time, and I'm also a bartender, so I have to work late at night.
Mhm.
And sometimes I had to, I'd be back home at 4 in the morning and had to be on set at 7. So it was like this continuous thing. So I did need breaks and all that, and the actors needed breaks. So it went from late August, I want to say it was late August or maybe early September of 2018, if I'm right. And then we shot for 3 months straight. We did some pickups in January, and then in October of 2019, we shot the hypnotist scene and the scene with Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr.,
Mm.
the record shop scene. So during that time span, I was able to consistently recut the movie, and trim it down and try to perfect it as much as I can.
What about the venue you actually used, and basically the streets and sidewalks? I want to take a wild guess. Was it Silver Lake?
For which part? It's a nice mixture.
Oh, it is. It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. So that's why it is a fictional city in the movie, and that also helps us with running around permits, as well as geography not really making sense if you know the streets, because you're like, wait a second, that shop is like on, it's somewhere in Silver Lake, and then the guys walk over an X block, and now you're like in Eagle Rock somewhere. So that helps us get away with a lot of stuff. And the venue itself is the iconic venue out here, the Smell in downtown, and they were really
Oh,
accommodating. So that
that
was
is,
really
that is
cool.
that is very accommodating. Well, let me start wrapping things up with you. I mean, it's obligatory to ask the question, but because of the pandemic, it seems like a silly question. But do you have upcoming projects for yourself? I know you probably have ideas in the pipeline.
Well, I've been shooting, I think for a year and a half now, and this is like, again, this is going to seem like a Linklater influence, but it actually, before we started shooting Boyhood, or before I found out about Boyhood, I had this idea for this story to follow these two young men, like probably like 20, 21, 22. And I wanted to show their friendship in a span of 5 years, how their friendship falls apart during that like early 20-year-old gap. And they're both music fanatics. One is really sex obsessed. The other is much more introverted and inexperienced. But I wanted to show how they change as people, And so we started shooting that, I think in early 2018, right before we were shooting I'll Be Around, we shot the first segment. So it's all vignettes. So I'm actually filming them within a 5-year time span. And that's done even more DIY than I'll Be Around. So that's still going on. And it's it's an experiment, and I think it's going to be really cool. But we still want to make the detective noir story that Dan Roje and I wrote. And we also came up with an anthology movie during COVID about lonely people during COVID. And each story is a different genre. But I think it could be kind of a companion piece to All Be Around, in a sense that the stories semi-connect. Not really, but semi-connect. And we want to try to get that going as soon as possible. But obviously, we have a lot of hurdles to overcome.
Excellent. And one last question to wrap everything up is why do you love independent filmmaking so much?
Just raw passion, energy. I tend to be a big fan of the American New Wave movies, or New Hollywood from early 70s. That are much more character driven. So I think, and I love stuff like, the original Terminator and all that, those are great movies, but I love character driven stories that are less plot driven. And I feel like independent movies in particular are more about the characters and going through like this hangout experience. So to me, it's a lot more relatable. And those are my favorite scenes. And, even like in comic books, for example, from like mainstream superheroes, I don't care about the battles or any of that stuff. I like about their own inner turmoil, that sort of thing. So independent cinema tends to focus more on what I find really appealing and relatable in film.
Great. I know you're playing throughout for the rest of the weekend for the Egyptian Theater virtually. But by chance, are we going to have more opportunities to view? I'll be around.
I think next week it's at a New York Liftoff Festival. I don't know the exact dates, or it might actually be screening as of today. I got to look that up. And we've submitted to 20 other festivals, and we'll see because of the pandemic. They keep getting pushed back. So I think a few of them are going to go online, but we'll see. And I think eventually I'll have it up on my own Vimeo for people to scope out.
Excellent. Hey, thank you very much, Mike, for this conversation. You're such a delight. We had so many things that we could actually talk about.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great, great. Thank you very much. Nice
All
meeting
right, thank you. Nice meeting you.